See what happens. So I'm here with Rita Holgers in her home outside of Chicago, and she's agreed to let me ask her some questions and put it on tape so I can bring it back to all you guys that have been through these trainings, Dr. Yu and my many new friends. So Rita, I believe, is in her 91st year now.
I am 90. I was 90 in November.
So she's 90 years old, and she was the woman who called me when I was a chiropractor in 1987 and asked me to come to her home to discuss energy balancing. And at that time, she'd just had her teeth out recently and had saved her life, and she was got in a relationship with Ben, who they cared for each other until Ben passed.
Yeah,
so
I married him.
yes, you were, yeah, you were his wife. Took his name. I'm aware of that. But I'm just going to ask Rita some questions, and just so you guys can hear that what she told me back in 1987 is much different from the narrative that you've been given, and we'll take it from there. I wrote over the last month. I think it's an 11-page document here, and it's still in its unedited form, but it's basically Reinhold Bull's history as related to me, Jeffrey H. Schofield, by Ben Awana and Rita Holgers in 1987. So I'm going to use what I find out from Rita today, and I'm going to ask her questions and make sure I have this information correct. And then we're going to try and get this printed and available for all those that come for Dr. Yu's training, so we can kind of go back in history and realize the deception that's occurred regarding Reinhold Bull's work, and see where it goes. It's not going to change the insanity, other than it will be the true nature of what Reinhold Bull tried to bring to the world. So Rita, you met Ben Awana. You went to a lecture that he gave. Is that correct? And that's how you first met?
No, I had gone to a health food store in Glendale, Arizona. And I don't know why my car took me to that particular store, because most of the products I ordinarily bought there, I already had. But I went in the store anyway, and I bought a package of the oat bran for cereal. Instead of the big chunks of oatmeal, this was, tiny little flakes. And when I went to pay for that, the man at the counter mentioned something about a man he had met that was testing people for their level of mercury from their teeth that was causing sickness in the person. And I said, well, I wouldn't need to know that, because I've just been through a whole 2-year program that I learned about out of Mexico that helps the body clean itself. And he says, no, I think you really need to meet this man, because he has a machine that will show you what your numbers are. And he said,
What was the name of the machine?
EAV, that's electroacupuncture according to Vol.
The Dermatron?
It's called a Dermatron.
Yes, okay.
And it's what they call the field model.
Okay.
There have been many models since, but that was called the field model. And he said, I will call him and make an appointment for you to meet him.
Oh.
And 3 days later, I had not heard anything. So I called the number that he had given me on a piece of paper. And that's how I met Ben. And then I went into Phoenix, where Ben was working with Jerry McClarty. And Jerry McClarty had worked for Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena and was a computer kind of a person. And he was working on a number of things. And he had a lot of laser developing pieces of equipment in his house. And using his equipment, and Ben brought wheatgrass, fresh wheatgrass with him, and they made a way to use the laser system in order to potentize a product that contained liquid gold, among other things. They put a lot of homeopathic remedies into that energy field also. And that was what we called Formula 640. I don't know if you remember that.
Well, when I had my wisdom teeth pulled, that evening he put liquid gold, what he called liquid gold, under my tongue as I was dealing with having my wisdom teeth pulled.
That was the Formula 640.
Okay.
And 640 was the number of his home in Hawaii. That's where it got the name.
Where was his home in Hawaii?
On Diamond Head.
On the main island, or?
On Oahu.
Oahu?
On Diamond Head.
Diamond Head. So that would be something we could Google and find out where that is.
That's...
I guess. I'm not familiar enough
okay,
with...
Diamond Head is where the exclusive area of Hawaii is. Diamond Head. And...
Tell me about Ben's dad being a kahuna and developing the gyroscope for the ships so that they would stay steady. Tell me the relationship between Ben and his dad being trained as a kahuna, an Hawaiian kahuna.
I don't know that about his father. I know that Ben was trained. Beginning at age 8, he was selected as a member of the royal family to be trained as a kahuna, a healing person.
Yes.
And he went to all the different islands to meet with the people in those days that were known as the healer.
Right.
And they taught him what they knew.
Oh, you know, I misunderstood. I was under the impression that his dad was the kahuna and that he never trained, but you're telling me that he trained.
His father arranged that this boy would be as the family healer, because in the royal line from King Kamehameha and Queen Emma, each family of the royal blood selected a family member.
Okay.
And Ben's father selected Ben when he was 8 years old. So that was a big part of his life, and he was taught by his father and his two grandfathers. One grandfather was from the English area, I think Scotland, and the Guinness Brewery was the money from that grandfather. And then the other grandfather was the Hawaiian grandfather came from the southern part of China. So we had this eastern and western grandfathers. They were both barristers and spoke 7 languages, came on ships because they handled all the commerce. And then they married native Hawaiian royal girls and stayed there. And they were the ones that ran all the contacts for the commerce, for the exchange of goods and all, from Hawaii into, from China and England and Scotland and.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about where Ben received his training from Reinhold Voll.
Reinhold Voll was in dentistry. There was a young man by the name of Ron Carlson who was a practicing dentist, and he
And Ron Carlson practiced in Hawaii?
yeah, in
Okay.
Honolulu, Hawaii. And Ben wanted to teach him, and somewhere along the way, the dentist had gotten one of the primitive first devices that you could test the teeth with, just the teeth.
Okay.
And of course the body with the organs and the teeth, but it didn't have any kind of therapy part like the.
Did it have a well that you could? Was it still testing the different acupuncture points? Like.
I never actually saw that other than pictures of that device that dentist used, and Ben wanted to upgrade him into what he was using, called the field model.
Of the Dermatron.
Of the Dermatron, and Dr. Voll somehow had gotten to Honolulu.
Do you know what year this was? Approximately, just some idea. Because this is of interest to the historian Carolyn Winsor.
I know.
She was asking me.
1979 was the year that comes to mind. But whether that was the actual year or not, I met him in 1985. And he had been doing this for many years.
Yeah, he seemed like he said he'd been doing this for 30 years. That was the number that stuck in my head. And he worked with 1,100 patients over a 30-year period, terminally ill, sent home to die. And his basic protocol was to clean them out with homeopathics and then take them to a competent dentist and
No.
get their teeth extracted.
No.
Tell me if I've got this wrong. Yeah.
As I recall, there was a man by the name of Ev Story, and he was a graduate of, I believe, the University of Chicago, where he and another student had done an experiment on atomic energy, and they had created a device, and they wanted to test to see if it would explode. So they went to the field house on the campus, and under the bleachers, they wanted to detonate this device. And they thought, oh, I don't know if we should do that. So instead of doing that, they threw it in Lake Michigan. And it exploded. So then they turned the whole thing over to the university itself. And that's how the University of Chicago got all involved with the development of the atomic energy. That was Ev Story. And Ev Story had learned about a product that would break down the caliche clay so that out in the desert areas they could begin to farm and grow crops. And that product was called Opinol. And you could buy it in the landscaping stores for $7 a gallon. A gallon. And when somebody got a hold of that and decided if it's true what Ev Story says, that this is a beneficial product on humans, as he saw the migrants who did the farming in California. He saw these people get well by using this product, putting it in the water and drinking the water. And then somebody picked up on that and changed the name and began to market it for $25 for a 1 ounce bottle. And the next thing you know, I had already purchased on 2 occasions a gallon of this product, and when I went a few months later to buy another gallon, they didn't have it anymore because this other people had, oh boy, that's so many details things, but I did a radio broadcast in Boca Raton, Florida about this particular product. But that was, I don't know, maybe 98, 99, somewhere in there.
So this
And
was,
that product today is still sold. The company has been sold 4 times, but it is still available today, and now it's $40 for the ounce. And I think I mentioned something about that product in the book.
in her book. And just so you know, this is Rita's book, Radiation, the Hidden Enemy. And so I'm still pinching myself that I'm really here with Rita because I've wanted to talk to her for so many years. I stayed true basically to what you taught me, and it cost me everything, this knowledge of Reinhold Wohl, as far as my respect as a professional,
Absolutely, yeah.
my family
Absolutely.
on both sides.
Yeah,
After I saved my parents' life,
yeah.
they helped.
I corresponded with them when they left Arizona and went back home to, they lived in southern Utah,
Yeah, up in
and
up
then
in
they moved to
Utah.
Oregon.
Yes, up in Port Orford is where they both passed away at.
And he died, I think he died first, didn't he, your father?
My dad's name was Paul.
Paul. And then I received a picture of the whole family when they were all together for one of the 90-year anniversaries of either the mother or the father, I don't remember which. But they had sent me the picture of that, and then sent me all the information about that, you know, how they had lived there and how they were, the story of the family and the picture of the.
Okay.
So I kept up with them until they died. I corresponded every Christmas with them.
That's wonderful. See, I became black sheep, even though it
Sure
saved
you
my
did.
parents' life
I know.
because of the Mormon belief system.
That's exactly right. They couldn't have any contact with you.
They chose to.
They didn't choose. Everything was chosen for them
By the belief.
by the Mormon religion.
Yeah, and I'm no longer in an active member. I've broadened my perspectives to include all people. I don't see how any one church could claim to be the only true church.
That's right.
So I have 4 children from Suzanne, and you remember Suzanne and I's trip down to Mexico where you and Ben. Remember Suzanne tripping and hurting her ankle, and you and Ben got out the laser so we could finish getting her to the dental office.
I'm sure he would have fixed everything. I remember the baby. The baby, I think, was 9 months old when you came.
Andrew, yes, he's like 34 now. He's got a YouTube channel where he analyzes Nintendo games.
Oh.
He loves the gaming industry.
Okay, yeah. Well, young men do that. They love that, yeah.
And so, because of this knowledge, which I've stayed true to, and I'm so thankful to be with Rita again, I've lost, the role of a father. I've been replaced on so many levels by Suzanne, whose life was saved she would rather let her mother, father, and sister die with their teeth in their mouth than acknowledge that I had any correctness about
Oh, absolutely.
having coerced
Absolutely.
her in the first place to have her teeth out, but she turned against me after. And she now practices chiropractic in Ephraim, Utah, with her son-in-law, who's my second daughter Heather's husband, who is a chiropractor, who went to Logan Chiropractic College. And it's called Skyline Family Chiropractic. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. And she's still very healthy because she had her teeth out and she's able to keep practicing, where her older sister, who is a chiropractor, has passed away now, and as has her mom and dad. But she would, rather than admit that I had any correctness about staying true to this knowledge of that Rita and Ben imparted to me, she would let her own parents die and her sister die with their teeth in their mouth. This is how intense this narrative is, that save the tooth at all cost has caused to the human race. This is sacrilege. The money and the big money that's made off of fillings is allowed to continue. And I don't know what effect Rita and I talking is going to have, but I have high hopes that the truth will prevail. I do.
At this point, I'd like to interject in working with your mother.
Okay.
Your mother had these terrible headaches, right?
Yes, and
Terrible
allergies.
headaches.
Yes.
And nobody could seem to help relieve those headaches. Now, as I recall, was it your father that drove your mother to Phoenix straight through, and somehow they came to our house?
Well, I went to your house first with my wife, and then I was down in California at one of my sister's accordion recitals, and they'd been dealing with cancer using Garrison therapy for 12 years at the time that you called me, and so I told them about you. I
That's
didn't
what
want to
they
get my teeth out,
That's
but
what
I
they
brought
said.
them to see you because they were at rope's end after 12 years dealing with their
But
dad had liver cancer and mom had colon cancer.
yeah, but your father and mother came to us late at night. It was after 9 o'clock. We didn't know who they were or how they found us, but Ben always opened the door to everybody.
Oh, I don't remember that. I know that they drove
But
from
they
California,
drove
but I didn't realize
straight-
that
they drove straight through because you had said to them, "This man will help you."
That's right.
And when they came in, your mother really she couldn't say more than 2 or 3 words. She was incredibly weak, and it was very difficult for your father to try to do what he needed to do to help her, and he was desperate.
Right.
And Ben tested her, and of course the numbers were catastrophe. And he says, "I don't understand this. You wear dentures, and I don't understand why you're having all this trouble with these organs." So he asked her, "Would you please take out your dentures?"
This was my grandmother you're talking about. My grandmother and grandfather. From your book, you talk about them in your book.
But
My parents had come to you first and had their teeth out in Mexico, and then later on my grandparents came. And I was there when Ben looked at you and said, "This is going to be the easiest extraction we've ever had." And he talked to my grandmother and said, "Please take out your dentures." And then the stomach meridian came back up online, and she just had to have dentures made that weren't full of radiation. Is that correct?
This is where we learned that the dentures were her problem.
Yes.
And we asked her, see, I've thought all these years that was your mother.
That was my grandmother.
Oh,
yes.
but anyway.
Leon Thatcher, and then Howard Thatcher was my grandfather. And you speak about them in the book. I had to read between the lines to figure out that you were actually speaking of my grandparents in there.
And this is how we learned that there was radioactive something in the dentures, but we had no idea at that point in time what was the story. And we took her to, in those days, there was a profession called a denturist. So we found a denturist in Arizona, one of the few places that they...
Can you help me? My battery's going to probably go dead if I don't keep charging it.
I'll find a long plug.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
But this is how we found that we had to take her to the denturist and have proper dentures made. And then, of course, from then on, she kept improving. But
Yes.
but we still didn't know. When we asked her one question, I remember she said she had surgery, and she wouldn't take her dentures out even when they wanted to do the surgery. She said, once those dentures went in, I never went without them. So we needed to learn what was going on. Well, the upshot of that story was that in order to make Hollywood films, they knew it was important for people to have their teeth visible. And if you put radioactive elements into the material to make the dentures, those dentures would kind of glow back at the camera. And then we followed with Rock Hudson, and we followed with Michael Landon, and found that they had these bright, shiny teeth. And we said, of course, that's why those people have these medical problems, is they're like this woman that had the radioactive dentures.
I don't have to go.
Okay, Debbie, thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. I love having, Debbie, please.
And then
We have a helper over here called Debbie that helps
the level
Rita.
of radiation depended upon what element they used in the dentures to create the color. So they tried, the cobalt and the uranium. And what we discovered is that this was making so many of the Hollywood people sick because the studio said, if you don't have your teeth capped with this new material, they didn't have the teeth extracted, they had caps made on their teeth, and they were with this radioactive element that nobody was dealing with.
Okay.
And that's what killed Michael Landon. And that was one of the parts that affected Rock Hudson. And he went to France to get more information as to what had happened to him. I mean, I still have the letter that I wrote to Elizabeth Taylor about the issue of the HIV and the radioactive caps on people's teeth.
You do?
I wrote that to her attorney, but he never responded. But I kept a copy of the letter.
Yeah, Hollywood stars are very
Well, they killed them with this radiation.
untouchable as far as trying to help them, but then they're still human.
That's when we discovered about the film that John Wayne was in, and a fellow by the name of Powell. And anyway, there were a number of people, and they made this film up in Utah. And when they couldn't finish it, they hauled tons of this soil down to the studio in Hollywood to continue making the film. And every person that was involved in the making of that film, all those stars died. And they said, well, why? And then when Ben and I learned about all those people that died, and then we said, hey, but that was radioactive
Dirt.
because of the above ground testing that was done in the Southwest, because they did it in so many places.
Not just the test site where my dad worked. Do you remember my dad worked at the test site?
He was sent to the underground area where they had these filters, and the military ones that picked the filters up from their devices were fully clothed with all the apparatus. And your father just had regular work clothes on. And when he would bring the work clothes home, Mama washed them in the machine. And our determination was, because when your mother got pregnant with you, that you were fully exposed to the same radiation as your mother. And that's why you had so much difficulty growing up and trying to follow the rules of society, because you had this contamination from that below ground testing that they never told your father, and that's how your father got the liver cancer.
So enlightening. Thank you so much. Yeah, I remember my dad telling me about the scientists. He really liked working with the scientists, and he described his time at the Atomic Testing Center as they would take a prefab metal building, and the scientists would put all of their equipment in there, and then they'd bury it, and then they'd do the detonation, and then his job was to go in, and then the scientists would go in and take the equipment out and do all the readings as far as what the seismic effect was of the blast, and then he would go in there and disassemble this building and take it to another site for the next detonation. That's what he described to me.
Doing. Oh, we got the impression that he went to these underground test sites. Yeah, but it was not underground. It was actually inside this building.
Well, they would dig a hole and build this building and put scientific and these scientists were ex-Nazis.
Of course.
These were all the Nazis working at the test site.
Of course.
And so he really liked, he thought, well, I'm interacting with the
Sure he was.
But like you said, he didn't wear any special protective equipment.
They did not tell him they were at any risk.
And so that's what I remember. I actually tried to get $40,000 whatever for his getting liver cancer from being exposed to the test site. But you know what? He would never admit on, and he never really had a real medical diagnosis that where a medical doctor stated he had liver cancer. So I was unable to, because it would have been a good chunk of money for all my brothers and sisters because he got rated. But I tried, and basically he was embarrassed about having liver cancer, and so after he got better from you guys' having the teeth out, he said, "Well, I've had liver problems." When we went to get his hips replaced, he wouldn't put it into the medical record that had a diagnosis of liver cancer by an osteopath. He basically got embarrassed about it. So I couldn't find any record to cash in on this claim, and that's okay. It was an interesting attempt at trying to get some money for my siblings, maybe regain some self-respect, because I had some money for them. But I doubt it would have changed anything as far as the belief system, but everybody likes a little extra money in the mail,
And when you first met, were you a chiropractor then?
Yes, my wife and I graduated together from Palmer Chiropractic College in 1983, March of 1983. And her mother's a well-known chiropractor, Dr. Sheila K. Laws, and taught the NIMO receptor tonus technique, which is trigger point therapy, to all the chiropractors. Like Janet Travels was a friend of Dr. Nimmo, but he's a chiropractor, but Janet Travell was the medical front for the trigger point therapy. So I married into this 3 chiropractors, mom and the 2 sisters. Yeah. So it was, graduated in '83. We moved to Arizona and set up practice. And by 1987, when Rita called me, we had our own practice, had a X-ray machine, and we were doing quite well. And Rita had met Ben, and so she and Ben were looking for professionals who could share this energy balancing.
Teach about the jaw adjustment.
And Ben taught me how to adjust the jaw.
Right.
As part of that.
That was our whole intent in working with you, was to teach you, because we could not find a chiropractor willing to make that adjustment. And of course found out why they weren't willing, because the Palmers said when they established their college, if we teach the chiropractors to adjust the jaw, the whole body falls in alignment. We won't have anything else to adjust. So we're going to eliminate. That was in Davenport.
Now, I did not realize that. I studied the history of the founder, D.D. Palmer, and he
Carnation Milk Company.
Before, well, I'm not sure, but before he learned how to adjust the spine, he was a magnetic healer, like Reiki. He would just put his hands and that was before they put metal in the teeth. So he was getting tremendous results just by, energizing the body but the metal in the teeth changed everything. They used to be able to reverse, with adjusting, get the cervical spine and the lumbar. But once the teeth got in there, and I would take lateral x-rays of the spine, the cervical spine, I would see a mouth full of metal, and I'd look at the military neck, and I'd say, well, no wonder we can't, like in the old days, we can't restore that cervical spine because all the meridians are jammed with his teeth. So it was like I correlated that with what you taught me. And after I saw my parents get over their cancer, I coerced my ex-wife Suzanne into going with me, and Ben and Rita rented this big van and took us down to Nogales, and we walked across the border together, and I sat in the dental chair, and then 45 minutes later I was toothless. Excellent dentist. And then my wife sat in the dentist while I had gauze in my mouth and clamped down. And I remember Rita, I was barefoot in the dental chair, and she would shine the laser on the tooth being extracted to slow the bleeding.
On your toes.
On the toes.
Yeah.
And then Ben would shine the light on each socket as the tooth came out.
And here's the laser right under the table there that I'd used.
Oh, well, be darned.
Yeah, it still works.
Did you, okay. Yeah, the experiences, it's just off, because Ben and Rita knew how difficult it was to get American dentists to pull teeth. So when I seen my parents get miraculously over their cancer, and every meridian the following day was a perfect 50 after they came back to Paradise Valley, to her home there. And so I saw this, and so this visual that came because she had Ben and her had the dermatron. And this is why I think it's so important that we continue on with Dr. Yu's work. Dr. Simon Yu has tried to simplify Reinhold Voll's work, where he only has 40 points, which measure like 10 points on each hand, 10 points on each foot. It gives you a general assessment of the meridians. He told me just the other day, he said that at the acupuncture, at the EAV trainings, according to Voll in Germany now, they have very few people that will come and very few that will continue on, because there's over 300 points that you have to learn. So he's trying to condense it down to 40 points, and he calls it AMA, kind of a play on words for the American Medical Association, because he's a medical doctor, but it stands for Acupuncture Meridian Assessment. And so I'm hoping that by me contacting Rita, that we can bring to light, let me see those two books there that you have, the knowledge that Dr. Voll was more than aware of the connection between the teeth, the odontons, and all of the rest of the body, contrary to what has been taught. I got some glare from the window light there. by the dental profession. And I know Dr. Yu has these books. But anyway, Reinhold Voll, as he's sitting here with his white coat on, he's got a urine bag hanging off his leg, and he doesn't have any teeth in his mouth. But the dental profession has taken, and the medical people have taken out his dental history. So I would like...
put that in a different place because it's got a glare on it.
That's just like not working. Let's see if we go over here.
That's better. Yeah.
Let me see if I can get another position out of the sun. So we get Rita here. Oh, that's better. There we go, Rita.
Okay.
That's a little better. But anyway, I would.
Does he make any reference to Dr. Char? Dr. Hugh, does he make any reference to Dr. Char?
He has met almost every. He's been invited to speak in Germany at the Baden-Baden, where they have 5 stories of all these devices they've come up with to measure the energy system, but they still, have the save the tooth at all costs narrative, and have taken Reinhold Voll's dental history out of the books. So, I know. Would you please, just according to your knowledge, speak what you were told by Ben about Reinhold Voll's dental history and how, as much as you know about his trip to China, more details than you shared in your book, I would just love if you could just kind of flow with what you are aware of as far as Reinhold Voll's dental history.
I do know that when Dr. Voll was diagnosed with the cancer, and he had learned that something about acupuncture, and he knew nothing of it, so he took a number of people with him, went to China, and he said to them, I want to learn all about the acupuncture. And the doctor there said, but it will take us 50 years to teach you everything there is to know about acupuncture.
Do you know where in China he went?
I don't know whether it's in his books or not. But I know that a lot of that, of course, was all in Chinese, so it's a matter of who translated it with how accurate it would be. But he said, I need to know right now. So
for his own life.
And he knew nothing about the language of Chinese, so when he went back to Germany, he had a British person, he had a German person first to translate the Chinese into German, and then years later from German into English.
By a British person?
And I know they came to Florida in I believe it was 1975.
They being Reinhold Voll?
Whoever was working with this concept had come to Florida, and Florida was where the very first acceptance of this machine, that the medical profession would allow people to use it. And in Arizona, they had the state legislature authorize the use of it as a medical device in Arizona, and that's how I could get the machine and learn about it in Arizona at that time, because it was written into the law. This is a legal medical device. And that came out of Nevada, because the Nevada senator had cancer, and when he was tested on the machine, they found the bad teeth, took them out, and then he got over the cancer. And that's how Arizona said, well, if it works in Nevada, we'll use it here in Arizona. And there were only maximum were 7 states that ever allowed it to be, Illinois being one of them. And that's how, when I came back to Illinois in 94, I could use the machine, but by 95 they made it illegal to use as a medical device in Illinois.
Oh, they did.
And anybody that had one that was German, that was teaching it, left and went back to Germany. Then the Vega machine came out.
Yes, I've heard of the Vega
And
machine.
people were using the Vega machine not knowing that they were in a balancing act as to whether, and then when people learned about this device, the Vega machine, immediately the FBI came in and confiscated, just like they did to Hulda Clark when they took away all of her stuff.
So, Dr. Simon Yu is a big proponent of parasites and loves Hulda Clark's work and has corroborated with Hulda Clark over the years. He himself and myself, I've done over 20 liver flushes. You know, I inherited my dad's liver challenges, and
Sure.
I've passed over 2,000, and I have a actual YouTube channel that shows these green things that come out of my liver.
Yeah.
That's the reason I'm still alive, I think, because
But
I learned about
Hulda
doing-
Clark when I met Charlotte Gerson. At,
Gerson?
yeah.
Like the Gerson therapy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Her father, Max Gerson.
Max Gerson.
Yeah.
So
And
you met Charlotte?
I met her in Phoenix at one of the health fairs and had a one-on-one conversation with her to help
Wonderful.
explain to me why I was not well, which I did not know at that time. I think that was 1983. I
Cool.
didn't know how sick I was.
And then it was 1983, so it was like what year was it you met Ben?
1985 in August.
So 2 more years. Do you mind if I pause this for a while? I need
Go
to
ahead.
use the restroom.
Yeah.
Just, and then we can continue on.